Okay, we're back for the second part of the critique for your best assignment, or your best shot assignment, rather. I'll keep this one a little shorter. That one kind of got away from me. I'm sorry. I hope some of you were able to stay awake through it. I'll keep this one a little shorter. At least you can always pause these when you need to catch your breath, get some coffee, and do something. So here's our first one for part two. This is a nice shoreline shot, but it's got a whole lot of empty space in it. This whole space over in here isn't really doing much for us. So I think the first thing I would do with this is to crop it. So I would want to get rid of a little of that sky. I mean, here's where the real action is, along here in the coastline. I don't really need all of that. So I think with a crop much like that, we've got a pretty good sense of the shot of the shoreline. I would only do one other thing with it, and that is I would bring up these shadows. I think that would probably have been easier to do in Camera Raw, but since we're here, and one of the things I'm trying to get you guys to play with is layers and layer masks, let's try that. So we're going to come over here, grab this layer, pull it down for a duplicate layer, and now we're going to change the mode. On the previous ones, we had darkened the scene, so we used multiply for our blend mode. But here, we want to lighten things a little, so I'm going to use the screen mode on this, and you can see how that lightened things up. Now, I'm going to make this a layer mask. And in this case, since I have just a little bit of it that I want to paint through, I'm going to invert this mask. So I'm going to use Control-I to do it. Control or Command if you're on a Mac. Now, our little icon over here is black instead of white, like it was before. So now what we need to do is paint with a white brush. So we come over here. We can either use this little curved arrow to change it, or you can use the X key to toggle back and forth, which is probably a lot faster. We'll come up and grab our brush. We're still set to about 40%. I'm going to want it a little bit higher than that. So I'll come in with the brush, I'll make it smaller, and I'm using the bracket keys to make this smaller on the fly. And I'll bring in that highlight. I'm also going to bring out some of this highlighted area so that it stands out a little more. Gives us a little more sense of dimension. Now, that's a little overkill. So all I have to do to get rid of it is go and change the brush color back to black and come in and paint over it. And we're back to square one. If I want to take it back just a little bit, I can drop the opacity. And now when I paint over it, I can darken it just a little. So I've got an incredible amount of control, but I still don't have this detail. So what I'm going to do is duplicate this layer, layer mask and all. So I'll come over, grab this, pull it down to duplicate it. Now I'm starting to see some stuff in there. This is getting too bright, so I need to click on the layer mask. Look at the little frame around it. When that frame is there, the mask is active. If it's not, then it's just like any normal layer. So I'm going to come on this layer and paint over some of that because I don't really need it to be any brighter. I do want this area brighter. So if you look over onto the icons, Now we're bringing some of this down the way we need it to be. I'm going to do it one more time. And I'm going to darken this area. Oops. So now we built that up a little bit. The problem is this shadow is really pretty much lost. Now what we could do is take all of these layers. I'm going to flatten this. Just do a layer, flatten image. And I'm going to see if I can put a little more data in this highlight. So I'll duplicate the image. In this case, I'll use the multiply to darken it. Create this as a layer mask, and again, I want to reverse this mask. So Command or Control I. Now with my white brush, I can come in. I'm going to set this back down because that's a little hot. Darken all of this where I've got more detail in there. Okay. Now I'm going to do one more thing to this. I'm going to flatten this image. I want to make this blue darker. I want to make it look like I had shot this through a polarizing filter. So I'm going to duplicate this layer. And this time I'm going to use a new layer mode called Luminosity. What Luminosity does is once it goes into effect, we are looking through the top layer at the bottom layer, but using the tones of the top layer. So how am I going to make that work? I'm going to turn this top layer into a black and white image. So I'm going to Image, Adjustments, Black and White. Now, if you look at this little icon, this is now black and white. But I get this dialog box. If I want to darken these blues, the colors that are up in here, that's probably a little much. I can bring that down some. I'm going to bring up the yellows just a touch to lighten up the foreground. Anytime you've got this kind of rich spring green, what you'll discover is we all call it green, but the truth is there's a lot more yellow in it than there is green. I'm going to bring up the reds just a little bit because red is one of the major components of this brown. I've already actually started to pick up a little detail down in here. So now I'll say OK. And I'll keep this, flatten my image. And now I've got my finished piece. We'll take a look at the snapshot. There was the original. There's our played with one. When I'm doing these, I frequently am going to take these farther than I might. I want you to see the effect. You don't know if you've gone too far or if you've gone far enough unless you've gone a little too far. You can always back off. Doing it this way with the layers, if you have gone too far, all you have to do is drop the layer opacity or lower the brush opacity, and you can bring it back to exactly where you want to. Well, this poor little dog. Oh, somebody just dropped a 100-ton weight on his head and squeezed him. It's a cute shot of the dog, but what happened is when you did the image size, these were not connected. Normally, if you click on this, you can see that these are locked together. See this little line in here? It means that when you change one, you change the other one with it. That must be locked. In this case, I'm going to unlock it so that I can stretch the height a little bit. And for this, I'm going to want it in percent. I'm going to make this, so let's say 200%. Well, his little dog tag looks pretty good. So we're probably close with this. So I'll say, okay. And now we have a much more realistic picture of the little dog. When that happens to you, before you go on, when you see that happen, go ahead and blow that up, go back, and do the image size right. I would probably, in this case, add a little bit of a vignette to this, just like we've done before. We'll come and pick up our black. I'm going to need a little more than 22%. Let's go up here. Now I've got him standing out a little bit more. Okay. Let's grab another one. We'll close this one. So here we have a shot of a tree in front of some kind of building. I'm not sure exactly what. Oh, maybe it's a cemetery. Maybe these are headstones. Let me see. Again, we've got this nice, powerful diagonal line, but let's make it a little stronger. Let's force the issue a little. Doesn't hurt to let a little of it go out of the screen, because it indicates you never know how far that could be going off screen. Then I would probably lighten this a little bit so I could see some of the texture in it. To do that, I'd bring this in closer. And we're going to do what we did with the previous one. We're going to make a duplicate layer. We're going to make this layer into a screen layer. Oh, look, there's all kinds of stuff there. We'll make it a layer mask. We'll invert the mask. And now, we'll come in with a nice small brush. And decide, is that too much? Maybe it is. Let's go back. Let's lower that brush opacity a little. And with that, we can brighten that up. If we needed to, we could brighten up this mausoleum part over here. There's a lot we could do to pick out individual areas of it. We go ahead and flatten that. Go to our overview. And again, it really feels to me like it's a little bit skewed. Another way to deal with that, if you'll notice, I went to the crop tool. If I pull the cursor outside, look what happens. It changes from the crop to a little pair of curved arrows. I can level that up if I wish, that way, if I need to level the entire thing. So there's yet another way to straighten the horizon. I'm sure we'll get one more chance to show you a third way to do it in a few minutes. Let's go on to a next. Oh, what a pretty sunset. Again, we're blown out in here. Boy, you've got to be careful with these. That sun is incredibly, incredibly bright. You really almost need a neutral density filter, a graduated neutral density filter. What we might be able to do is to simulate one in camera raw. And if we grab an adjustment brush and bring that down just a little, we can pick that up quite a bit in order to enhance the shot we're looking at. Is that square? Oops, grabbed the wrong thing. Well, it's off a little bit. So here's the third way we can straighten an image. You really need to do this. At the fair when I'm judging, that's a frequent way or a frequent reason for images to be rejected. If you come over here where the eyedropper is, one of the tools available to you is the ruler tool. So you want to select that. And if this is the part that you want to have straight, just click anywhere on it and drag a line out along that line. Okay? Once you've done that, when you go up to the top, there will be this option that has suddenly appeared called Straighten Layer. Now it's straight. You've got the side issues to deal with. You could do that either with cropping or cloning. But now you've got a straight horizon. So now we've covered so far 3 different ways to get your horizon straight. Simplest way here is probably simply with cropping. And fortunately, you don't have to crop much. In this case, the horizon was fairly straight. And there we go. I would get rid of a little of this sky up here, I think. To add some more interest to it. Okay. So there we are. Let's see what difference we've made, if any, to this. Here was our snapshot. There was our original. Now you could go in if you wished and play with all of this color. We'll do that with another one simply because I need to move on and we've got a lot of things ahead of us here. But we'll get to it. We'll do them. Okay. Well, this is easy. There's really not much to do with this one, except I probably would come in a little tighter on it. This is a beautiful product shot for a florist. It's a nice shot of this floral arrangement. I would pull it in just a little, I think. I might want to bring out this vase a little bit, but that again would be an artistic option. One thing to watch out for is reds are incredibly easy to oversaturate. So what I would highly suggest is when you look at one of these, let's do it on another layer just to make sure. It's going to Image, Adjustments, Hue and Saturation, and I'm going to pick just the red, and I'm going to drop the saturation a little. Just a touch is all it took, 6 points, and I picked up some detail in these petals. So be careful when you're shooting things that are red. I can now lighten these back up if I want by doing our good old version of the luminosity by picking a luminosity layer, going to Image, Black and White, and I can lighten the roses to any degree that I want to if I made them too dark with that. So there's an endless variety of things we can do to spiff something up. Now that I've lightened them and I've got the detail, now I think I may want to go back and put some of that saturation back now that I've got the detail protected. Oops, I'm on the wrong layer. Let's flatten this. I'll go back to the adjustments. Pick up reds. There we go. Now I've got the detail back in it. Cool. So it was kind of a long way around to do it. But reds are really a problem for digital. They're solvable, but they're a problem. Let's see if we can fit one more into this session. Okay, this is perfect. We have another still life that we can play with. Be careful sometimes of your reflections. You get to decide, do you want this to blow out white or do you want some detail of the surface in it? That's an exposure issue. Remember, with digital, it's exposure that's going to make those highlights either good or blown out. So let's do this. Let's bring this whole thing down a little bit with a multiply layer. Look at the extra detail that just came out in this yellow flower. Now, with our black brush and our layer mask, I'm going to need more than that. There we go. We can bring all of that back. And to make this really painterly, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to duplicate this layer. And now with a very soft light brush, maybe 20%, I'm going to make it bigger. Again, I'm using the bracket keys now to, come on. Just a slight vignette will help. You can see over here on the icons what we've done. And we'll see if that actually helped us any. That was our first one, a little washed out. There's our next one with a little more detail in it. So, again, there's a pile that you can do with these. So I'm going to stop this module here to give you a break from that last long one. And we'll go on to module 3 when you're rested up and ready to tackle it. See you then.